thank you for visiting Past the Wire TV, the YouTube channel of PastTheWire.com.
All right, welcome into Unfiltered, live on Past the Wire and Past the Wire TV. I am Jim Gazzali, joined as always by the Pick Six King himself, John Stetton. John, good to see you. How's things?
Always a pleasure.
Plenty of stuff to talk about. I know we're exchanging pleasantries off camera here, but we'll dive right into it. We got the breaking news that everybody already knew, that the Belmont Stakes is moving up here to Saratoga in 2024, and they didn't say 2025 yet, but we believe that that's coming too. We'll touch on that. The race is going to be run at 1.25 miles. What our thoughts are on that sort of change in distance for the last leg of the Triple Crown there. We'll dive into the Remsen, a couple of horses that I liked coming out of there. I'm sure John has a couple that maybe he likes as well. And then we'll touch on the Symposium out in Arizona, talk about what's being said out there, or perhaps what's not being said out there. And we hope to cover a lot of ground here in the next hour or so. So thanks everybody for joining us. And I'll stop talking now and then let you weigh in here, John.
Well, thanks everybody for tuning in to Past the Wire TV, a live episode. This was kind of a little bit of an impromptu live episode. We didn't announce it, so we might not have a lot of people on live with us, but the replay will be up there, so anybody who wants to see it, more than welcome to see it. Those of you who tune in, Smoggy Froggy, thank you. The 2024 Belmont Stakes being at Saratoga at 1.25 miles, and the not yet officially announced 2025 Belmont Stakes being at Saratoga with two of the 100 worst kept secrets in horse racing. I think everybody knew it was coming. My take on it is this. I think that there's a very good shot that the Belmont Stakes remains at 1.25 miles going forward, even when it goes back to Belmont. I don't think they're going to move it back to 1.5 miles. I think they're going to say, well, it's easier on the horses. It went well. And it may make it a more, and I'm against it, but it is what it is. Nobody's going to listen to me, but it's the kind of thing where you may get a bigger field year to year at 1.25 miles because there are more horses that can get 1.25 miles than that can get 1.5 miles. We don't really breed for that kind of distance anymore. So 1.25 miles from that aspect, I guess, makes sense. It takes away from the test of champions. The first couple are going to have an asterisk. The first Triple Crown winner under those circumstances gets an asterisk. I'm not in favor of it, but I can see the handwriting on the wall where they move it to 1.25 miles. Trying to find, lemonade out of lemons, if you can do that, and you can't really make chicken soup out of chicken shit, but you can maybe find the one positive that it may make it a more competitive race with bigger fields from year to year at 1.25 miles. That remains to be seen. But I'm against it. I think that the test of champions at 1.5 miles is historically part of the Triple Crown. It's an integral part of the Triple Crown. It ain't like nobody ever won it, so you can't say, well, it can't be done. The Triple Crown throughout the history of horse racing has always been. I agree, Froggy. I'm fine with it going to Saratoga, but don't like the 1.25 miles. But the Triple Crown, like I was saying, has always been a streaky type of occurrence. You know what I mean? They come in streaks, and then you go for long droughts without them. But it can be done with the right horse under the right circumstances. So I'm against changing it. I'm against tweaking it. I guess They have no choice with Belmont under construction where they're going to run it. So Saratoga, here we come for a 4-day stakes filled meet. Hopefully, it's a great little stake meet up there and a prelude to the spa. Honestly, it'll probably be a better meet than Saratoga because Saratoga is so watered down that they've extended it so long with all the cheaper races and state bred races and just card filling races to fill those cards during the week and even on the weekend sometimes. That I think that 4-day meet will create the buzz that Saratoga had in the 70s and 80s and back in what I like to call the glory days of racing. When there was that mystique at Saratoga that the people who go today and think it has that mystique really don't know the mystique that it used to have, so
yeah. Didn't you, John, weren't you on Twitter not that long ago, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but weren't you on Twitter a couple months ago saying that you would be okay with them kind of adjusting at least the schedule of the Triple Crown?
No, I've always been against it. Always been against it. I've always been in the camp, leave it alone.
Okay.
I'm fine with the schedule. I'm fine with the distances. I may have said something to the effect that I could see it coming and I could see the trend going that way. And I think I did at one point. I think what you're referring to, I think at one point I did say something to the effect that, well, I'm starting to see that side of the argument,
Okay. Yeah.
But on further reflection of that, I think I had a weak moment. I quickly reverted to my original way of thinking. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think there's a lot of things broken in racing. I don't think the Triple Crown is one of them.
No, I agree. I mean, I'm pretty excited for the race to be up here in Saratoga. It's right in my backyard, so
Sure.
I don't have to go very far, which is promising. I had multiple people text me today asking if the news was true. So already there's more buzz around the race than it would be if it was, down in Long Island. So that's exciting for me. Like you said, I don't think they had much of a choice in where they were going to host it, right? I love Aqueduct, but Saratoga or Aqueduct, I think it's a pretty easy choice. As far as the distance goes, again, what were they going to do? You're going to run a 1.5-mile race that starts at the, basically a 2 3/4 turn race at a 1.5 miles. Just seems a little nuts for, it's one race at that distance throughout the entire year, throughout the entire country. Although I will say it is, one of the more meaningful races throughout the year. So I will say that. But I think that this, and obviously it remains to be seen, but I think that this 1.25 mile distance, if they do it, let's just say for the next 2 years and even into the future, which I'm crossing my fingers that it moves back to 1.5 miles once Belmont is redeveloped. But if it stays at 1.25 miles, what does the Preakness become? I mean, like that becomes your B string horses, C string horses running for a decent purse, I guess, because they bumped the purse up this year to $2 million. It's at 1.25 miles, which, like you said, is more horses can get that than can get 1.5 miles. I think it's going to make it for a much more competitive race, and I think it's going to make for a much more interesting, I'll use the word interesting, I don't know if that'll be, positive or negative, but certainly a much more interesting Triple Crown campaign as horses perhaps are skipping the Preakness like they have been, but maybe targeting the Belmont because it might be more within their wheelhouse than the 10 furlongs has been in prior years. I don't know.
I agree with all of that. And hello, Thunderhawk. Thanks for tuning in. We're Froggy. Appreciate it. To run a mile and a half at Saratoga is not impossible. It would have to be a 3-turn race, I guess. They would have to start somewhere going into that into the far turn, I guess. And considering they run that 1 mile Wilson shoot race there, which in my opinion is one of the most ridiculous configurations in horse racing. There were two races in racing that I think are completely ridiculous to run, and one of them is an extremely unpopular opinion. But I think crossing over the dirt at Santa Anita, going down the hill, and in some of those other grass races is completely ridiculous. I'd rather see them put a tarp down or something before those grass races than force those horses to go off stride and lose their stride and lose their action or go wide or inside it when they hit that dirt strip. I just think it's terrible, and I'm surprised that they've avoided a serious accident for as long as they have with that. But getting back to Saratoga, they run that ridiculous mile Wilson mile shoot, which I think is just a horrible configuration. And they don't want to run the mile and a half Belmont because they say, well, the configuration of the track is not really set up for it. Good question, Walter. Will they run the Met Mile at the Spa? I'm imagining they're going to run all those stakes that they run on Belmont Day up there. I mean, it's a 4-day meet, 4 racing days, and it's going to be stakes laden. So yeah, Met Mile at the Spa, added a ridiculous Wilson shoot. What happens then? Okay, the Met Mile, big sire making race, so they like to call it. Okay, historically produces blazing fast times at a mile. We talked a little bit about the Cigar Mile and how that and the Met Mile last week. We talked about how they historically produce really, really fast times. This year the track was a little funny, but that aside, now the Met Mile, if they run it out of that Wilson shoot, I can tell you right now, unless they put down some pavement or something, that track, that configuration does not produce fast mile races. I mean, they run the miles very, very slow out of that Wilson shoot. So you win the.
I don't know how you would fit 12 horses in there either, right?
It's another good question.
Every time you've seen
her, they have to make the Met Mile 7 furlongs this year. Maybe the Met 7. I don't know.
Yeah, because anytime you see that head-on shot coming out of the Wilson shoot, you could probably count on one hand and only a couple fingers the amount of times that configuration has had more than 6 horses in a race, and they're always pushing it up a little bit to give them a little bit more room to go around that first half turn there. So. And the Met Mile always draws a full field, so that'll be interesting to see how many they try and cram in there.
It's ridiculous, and they've already publicly said that they can only get 6 or 7 in there, quote, safely, and it's all supposed to be about safety and the horse. So I think there are some issues yet to be decided. I mean, nobody's talking about the Met Mile and whether they're going to run it over those 4 days, and if they're going to run it as the Met 7. You heard it here first. They may not have a choice. What if they get 12 or 14 horses? What are they going to do?
Yeah.
Split it?
I don't know.
Two divisions of the Met Mile? And then what about all the breeders that like to have horses that win the Met in 132 and change, 133 and call it a sire making race? What happens when they run it in 136 and 137? What does that do to those horses as studs? Do they get an asterisk? Does everybody give them a pass? Well, we ran it up at the Wilson shoot. So, it's lack of a better term, logistical nightmare.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'm sure there's still a lot of dust that still needs to settle. Who knows? Maybe the Met Mile goes back to where it originally was on July 4th weekend, and push it back a month.
It wasn't July 4th. It was
Oh,
Memorial.
Memorial Day. Yeah. Sorry. So move it up a week.
They may do that. They may do that. That, in my opinion, is probably the best solution of them all, because Aqueduct's got the 1 mile shoot, and they can run it like they used to. That, in my opinion, it would be the smartest idea of all. And I would bet dollars to donuts that the breeders who pull a lot of weight would be in favor of that. So we may see the Met Mile back on Memorial Day for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
There goes the Met 7, just like that. It came and went.
Yeah. I know there's some naysayers on Twitter that don't think that this would ever happen, but I still have got to believe that, in my own mind, that all of the higher end upgrades that they've made at the track, with the different suite areas and sectioning off different parts of the track for specific tickets and whatnot, and now the Belmont going up there for a 4-day meet, I have to believe that this is almost like a trial run for a potential Breeders' Cup weekend up in Saratoga at some point in the next 5 or 7 years.
Maybe I think it's more of a prelude or a trial run of extending the Saratoga meet for the whole summer, just moving up there for that Belmont Stakes and then just staying up there. They just keep milking that meat and making it longer and longer and longer. It's a huge win the next 2 years for all the hotels, all the restaurants, all the local businesses. They're all happy about it. But for me, the Breeders' Cup at Saratoga, as much as I like Saratoga and as much as I like the Breeders' Cup, I don't know. I like fruit and I like whipped cream, but I don't like whipped cream on my fruit. So it's kind of like the same thing. I like Saratoga and I like the Breeders' Cup. I love them both, but Saratoga in November is cold.
I live here, so I would like it.
I agree. Snow. What are you going to do to get a blizzard for the Breeders' Cup?
I know.
I remember the year Monmouth was lucky enough to have it once. It rained like forget about it.
Yeah.
So
I know.
A lot of people knock it being in California. I like it being in California because when I handicap, I like a level playing field. And I like to know that the weather is most likely going to be good and it's not going to be sloppy, and you're not going to have to worry about ridiculous turf courses and things of that nature. So I'm fine with them keeping it in Saratoga and going back and forth from Santa Anita to Del Mar. I had Dora Delgado, vice president of the Breeders' Cup, on the show, and she said that Naira is definitely in the fold once they renovate Belmont. Never mentioned Saratoga. Gulfstream probably did the biggest blunder in the history of racetrack construction when they made the new Gulfstream too small to host the Breeders' Cup, when it's an ideal venue for it, and they used to host it and it was a success there, and now you put 15,000 people in that place and you can't move. So they're at it running all together, which I'll never understand the logic behind that. But here we are, so.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm a fan, at least for a year or two. I think to your original point that perhaps they don't extend the distance back out to 1.5 miles, I'd be a little disappointed with that. But, for it to run at 1.25 miles this year at Saratoga and potentially the same thing in 2025 after that, I think it'll make for a much more interesting Triple Crown season. And ultimately, I love tradition as much as the next person, but if you're going to give me a much more competitive betting race, then my desire for a traditional, we'll call it Triple Crown, might start to drop over the years if we can get a good competitive full field running a mile and a quarter in the Belmont year after year.
I could see that argument, but I just think it's lack of a better term, a monkey wrench. Courtyard Marriott near the Rivers Casino, $250 a night. That's not bad. I would have thought they'd be charging a lot more than that. But my thought is this: you run it at a mile and a quarter and you keep it at that. And I do believe they're going to do that. If I could get Vegas or somebody to give me a line on the Belmont staying a mile and a quarter, I'd make a large wager, especially if the odds were big. I don't think they're going to move it back to a mile and a half. But, the thing is, you change it. Now you have a Triple Crown winner that wins the Belmont at a mile and a quarter. Do you look at them the same as the ones that won it at a mile and a half? I don't know the answer to that question definitively. I don't think anybody does. The test of champions for a reason. A mile and a half is a big part of that reason.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point. What happened during the COVID years? You don't really hear people talking about Authentic as this great Kentucky Derby winner because it was in September. You don't really hear too many people talk about, Tis the Law winning the Belmont. Right. At, what was it, a mile and an eighth?
Yeah.
I mean, so you do have these weird instances in time where the distance needs to be changed for obvious reasons. But yeah, to your point, I think it does diminish the historical conversation then, years down the line.
Absolutely. One of the great things about racing that we're losing, and we're losing a lot, but to me, one of the great things is the historical aspect of the sport. We're over 100 and something years old. Saratoga's over 100 years old, that racetrack. It's historic. You could feel it when you walk in the place. You can feel the vibe, the history, the horses that have raced there, And when you start taking that away and watering that down, to me, what they've done to Saratoga, and I hate to knock it, because I love the place. I grew up spending every summer there. But to me, what they've done to Saratoga with the semi-modernization and the profit centers that they've tried to turn it into with different sections and different seating and different pricing. And I think we talked about this, how you used to be able to walk into the paddock and the trees were there and there was nothing there and it was all free. Now, to me, it's like you go out and you buy a brand spanking new red Ferrari for $500,000, okay? And you take it home and you go to Kmart and buy this big aftermarket spoiler and put it on top of it. You know what I mean? You just don't do it. You don't mess with certain types of perfection, Ferrari is a legendary historic vehicle. You don't put nothing aftermarket on it, As a matter of fact, a lot of people don't know this, but it's actually a bad analogy because Ferrari doesn't let you do that. When you buy a brand new Ferrari, they actually make you sign a contract that you will not do any modifications like that because they don't want to see that. So to me, it's the same thing. You don't mess with something that's perfect. Yes, I say you update the tote system, you update the odds, you update the technology that's available. I mean, I remember going to Saratoga and having to wait for the photo finishes to come down that long thing. They used to, send them down that wire, to the little office. That's where the paddock, the paddock betting windows are now, and that's where the stewards' little office was, where they used to look at the photo finishes in there. Yeah, you change that, technology wise. But as far as the rest, no. And as far as, messing with the tradition and the history and the distances of a lot of those races, I'm just against it. I'm a traditionalist, and maybe that's wrong, but I understand we got to change with the times, but not everything. Not everything.
Yeah. All right, let's take a quick timeout. We'll be right back to talk about the Remsen, and we'll see maybe there's some horses that we think we might see in the Belmont up at Saratoga. Stay with us. All right. Who's your monster?
Sierra Leone.
Yeah. The horse did look pretty darn good.
Looks
he
like
just looked a lot bigger, physically than a lot of these other horses.
He's got monster, in my opinion, written all over him. There were so many things we could say about him, and we talked a lot about him going into the race. Okay, but the fact that off one maiden race where he ran greenly, Chad runs him in this spot. Okay, one of the first horses that Coolmore gives to Chad. If you look at him here in the Remsen coming out of that green maiden win where he was full of himself and on the wrong lead, he's not even in the picture. Well, he's in the picture barely. He's about a dozen, maybe 15 lengths off. Looks like he's got no shot. Okay. Not only that, if you watch the races on Saturday, the track was very speed friendly and also inside friendly. So he had that going against him already. Looks like he's got no shot. He's not even in the picture. Okay. Dornock is on the lead, pretty much having it his own way. Respectable half mile, got challenged a little, but really, was within himself here. Just doing it. He took, they took a shot at him here. Sierra Leone ain't even in the picture. Now he comes into the picture, and this horse makes what I would describe as nothing less than a monster move, wide. I mean, he's almost on Lefferts Boulevard, for crying out loud. And he actually goes around this other horse, and he's still on the wrong lead, and he's still passing horses. He lugs in a little here. He straightens him out, and he runs past Dornock like he's standing still. Now, here's where my opinion is going to differ than a lot of other opinions. A lot of people say Dornock came back and beat him. And technically, that would be an accurate statement. But I don't believe that's what happened. I believe that Sierra Leone made that big move, figured I did my job, and kind of greenly and inexperiencedly pulled himself up a little bit early, thinking that, he did all he had to do, and was probably surprised that Dornock hung in there, taking nothing away from Dornock. He did hang in tough on the rail. He did get past. He did hang in the fight. But I think it's as much as Sierra Leone pulling himself up a little bit when he thought he got the job done, as Dornock coming back and beating him. I will say this. On a level playing field, I would be very surprised going forward if Sierra Leone doesn't prove to be the better of the two. And I would be very surprised on a level playing field if Dornock beats him again. I don't think Dornock sniffs his behind again, honestly.
What do you make of that? I agree with everything you said. Let's just talk about Dornock for a minute. He was buried on the inside there with an imposing horse, much larger horse than he is. That ability, however you want to, we could split hairs, but that ability to not quit after getting past, what does that say to you? How does that speak to you at this point in the year? And then does that piece interest you moving forward?
Well, I think it speaks to Dornock's quality and heart. He's also a green learning horse that's got a lot of talent, and he won the race. But I just think he's up against a significantly more talented horse who was also green, probably greener, and probably knowing Chad, and I think Walter mentioned this, that Chad is very smart, very patient. I think that he knows he's got a horse that can wind up in the gate on the first Saturday in May. And one of the keys of having a horse peak on the first Saturday in May is not having them cranked up in November. Zandon is a perfect example. Zandon didn't win the Kentucky Derby, and I think we all know that he just wasn't as good as we may have thought he was early. But I don't think I've ever seen a horse not win the Derby be brought up to the Derby as good as Zandon was. I mean, he was brought up and peaked and just couldn't get it done. Rich Strike ran a fluky race, and Epicenter just was better on the square than he was. But as far as being, perfectly prepared, he was, and I expect the same thing from Sierra Leone. The other thing I'll say is this: is Dornock is talented, but Sierra Leone looks like he's still growing into himself. You know what I mean? He's big, he's lanky, he's got to grow into those big bones and muscles and kind of fill out. And I think if he continues to progress that way, he's just going to be a force to be reckoned with. And it's a shame that the Belmont is not a mile and a half this year, because if it was, good luck handling that horse at a mile and a half. Good luck handling him at a mile and a quarter come that time if he stays healthy. Zandon got nosed by Mo Donegal in the Remsen, I remember, and Irad was all over him that day. That should have been a foul. That should have been a DQ, in my opinion. They made contact. Irad's arm hit Johnny's arm, and I always thought that was an automatic DQ. Apparently it wasn't, but Greg, that may be true. He may, but that's only his second start. He can learn to overcome all of that. And in Chad's barn, I would tend to think he will. I don't think those are going to be lingering problems. I expect a lot of Sierra Leone. I think Coolmore picked out that horse to give to Chad for a reason. We know they're dying to win the Derby. We know Aidan O'Brien is dying to win the Derby for them. He pushed Mendelssohn for all he was worth. Just wasn't his day that day, and didn't like the track. But I think that they definitely were thinking ahead when they gave Sierra Leone to Chad, and I think they picked a heck of a horse.
Where I'm trying to search for it really quickly here, but it's not coming up. I know Zandon won the Bluegrass. Where did he race in the lead up to that?
He ran in the Remsen, and then I think he ran fresh in the Bluegrass. He might have ran one race before that. I don't remember. Yeah. But the Bluegrass was his Derby prep, and he won it impressively. I don't
Let's see.
remember where he ran before that.
Oh yeah, he ran in the Risen Star, so down at Fairgrounds. I'm just looking at that, curious to see if that might be the same path that
I was
Sierra
wondering.
Leone
I
goes.
was wondering where he was going to go with Sierra Leone. He stables at Gulfstream, and I doubt he's going to go that route because he just doesn't look like a Gulfstream kind of horse. Uh, maybe Oaklawn, maybe Fairgrounds, maybe a prep like, and then the Bluegrass is his main Derby prep again. He does like Keeneland, and he did have success with that in the past. So, we'll see. But to me, that's that. I mean, him and Nash are the two that really look like they're heads and tails above the others that I've seen at this point.
Yeah. Was there any other horses out of that race that that you liked?
No, not really. I think that the wet track, might have hindered some of them. I think in the Demoiselle, Dolomite, who's a horse that we talked about, who I thought should have went to the lead, broke on top, then was taken back, wound up having a terrible trip in the Demoiselle. I think you can kind of draw a line through that race and watch her going forward. But as far as the Remsen,
What do you make of it? Obviously Sierra Leone made that huge run around the far turn. How much of that would you think was aided by the pace up front? Because if just looking at the chart real quick, Dornoch was on the lead, and he stayed on the lead and ended up winning the race. But you had Domestic Product was fourth early. Bilal was second early. Private Desire third early, and they finished seventh, eighth, and 10th. So, is there anything to be taken from those early fractions and seeing those other horses, fade as badly as they did?
I think it's a good question, and I think it's an interesting talking point. But I don't think there's that much we can really definitively read into it yet. You've got to see how some of those horses perform coming out of that race before we decide that. And it may at that point, downgrade what we saw from Sierra Leone, and it may upgrade it. But on the eye test, and I always like the eye test. Thanks, Michael. I didn't realize this damn won a grade 1 at Keeneland. But eye test, that's a horse that's dangerous going forward. Running style on a fast Saturday in May. I agree. There's always racing luck in the Kentucky Derby for sure. I mean, we're talking about 3, 4, 5, 6 horses. None of them may be in a gate. One of them may be in a gate. I mean, so much can happen
Right.
between now and then. You just don't know. But I'm not too worried about him.
Yeah. I mean, I like. I loved Sierra Leone in that race, and coming out of the race, love him even more. I feel like I might be still interested in Dornoch a bit more than you are at this point, but we'll see how he comes out of it and where he goes next. Of course, you're not going to get a great price on him wherever he shows up here in the next couple of weeks or months even. So at that point, I guess this brings up another good question. Figuring wherever he lands, he's going to be the favorite. So you almost get like a little bit of a free pass where you don't have to pay and cost yourself money to figure out what the next move is with this horse. Do you look at it that way?
I don't know. I'm not necessarily. I mean, there's it's really so early, you know. There's just so much that can change. I like spotting horses with you know, certain attributes, and I like spotting horses that are developing. Did the inside have anything to do with Dornoch? Maybe an inside. Yeah, I think the inside was a better part of the track. You know, we discussed that, Ben. I think the inside and the front was definitely the place to be, and I think both of those factors worked against Sierra Leone and upgraded his performance, in my opinion. Anyway.
All right. Anything else on this race?
No, be fun to watch. I mean, you know, I think it'll be. Yeah, I agree, John. Gulfstream is probably not the best place. Torby Dakota likes Dornoch a lot. And I think the better horse ran second. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
a lot of time for that to sort out. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting, you know, somewhat of a kickoff to the Kentucky Derby Trail, and you know, of course, we'll have our Kentucky Derby radar shows rolling out every week or so throughout the winter and into the spring, where we preview all of the prep races, recap the prep races, and hopefully help you guys find some winners. And I'm pretty sure, you know, last time on the Derby Radar show, we said, you know, probably not the best bet from a wagering standpoint on Dornoch, but you know, we both offered up the strong opinions on Sierra Leone. So you know, hopefully everybody found that helpful and useful to their handicapping and to their bankroll from last week. All right, we'll take one more quick break. We'll come back. We'll talk about all the things said and unsaid out at the Racing Symposium over the last couple days.
I'll get a lot of people mad at me for the next segment. That's for sure.
All right, we're back, and let's just get right into it. We'll start with this CAW talk from the Racing Symposium. This was probably one of the more anticipated panels, and it was a little goofy. I think that's a nice way of putting it. So take it away, John.
A little bit. First, you know, CAWs, okay? Big, hot topic, has been for a while, okay? First thing I want to say is that we at Past the Wire, okay, are the only ones, the first ones, and really get no recognition for it, but we actually interviewed and had an article, and it's still up on the site. I think we'll put a link to it in the comments here, with an actual CAW player. Okay, I worked with Scott DeRudy, who was on this panel, interviewed a CAW player, reviewed the contract that they signed with the TRA, learned a lot about what they can do, what they can't do, what they have access to, what they don't have access to. And we never really got any recognition or credit for that. And people are talking about now and asking questions now about stuff that we covered in that article, like it's all new news, okay? And it's not. We've been on this for years, okay? And I think the name of the article was CAW's blah, 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 racing's lifeline. Okay. And the reason that I called it that was because even back then, I recognized that they are a problem and it is a hindrance to the everyday player, which I'm one of them. But without their handle, horse racing is in a lot of trouble, more than people realize. And we'll talk a lot about that with this symposium nonsense, which I've got a lot of stuff to say about. But you know, it'd be nice if people read that article and knew that, you know, we were onto some of this stuff long before a lot of people were. And there's a lot of accurate information in that article that's just not accurately being portrayed even now. And people are under a lot of misconceptions about what really goes on and what these guys do and who they are and how many of them there are and how much they bet. But let's take Chris Larmay, and thanks, Chris, for putting this up on Twitter at Derby 1592. Chris is a good player with his heart in the right spot. The largest CAW players are affiliated with Elite Turf Club. That's a fact. Which is owned by the Stronach Group and now also by the New York Racing Association. That's a fact. Elite brought them in. Won't reveal the sweetheart deals given to elite players or provide wagering details on how much elite players are betting. That's also a fact. Now, I have some of that information, and it's in the article because this guy told me how much he bets and told me how much that some of the teams that he's familiar with, or some of the other players, I should say, because they're not really teams. Every CAW player is an individual that has to go through a background check and sign an individual contract with the TRA to become a CAW player and get the tote accents and everything that they have. But it's true, they don't publicize that other than what this person was willing to reveal in the interview. Now, the other thing is that, and I think there's another tweet somewhere that we'll get to that mentions this, but Chris is 100% correct. Okay. They should be transparent with all of this. Okay. We should know what kind of deals and what kind of rebates the elite players are getting. Okay. I believe they're getting 12 to 14% rebates based on certain volume, you know, certain monetary amounts of wages. If they bet a certain amount, I think they get that much in rebates. Okay. I think their handle is more than the 30% that they're admitting to. I said the best take I've seen on rebates, shift the highest percentage to on-track action. I agree with that. Tommy's got a lot of good ideas about that kind of stuff. So they're admitting and saying that it's around 30% overall. I think it's higher. Okay. And I've done my own, I don't want to say forensic because I'm not a forensic accountant, and a lot of the information that I had to get and look into is public and reported information, not information that I can independently verify as far as accuracy. But based on my own studies and my own research and my own talking to big players, I used to be a big player. I know a lot of big players. I know I know a couple of CAW players, but I know some people that bet millions and millions of dollars a year. And 90% of them, at least, maybe more, are betting less now than ever, with the exception of the CAW people. So I believe the CAW portion of the handle, at least at certain meets, but I believe overall is greater than the 30% that they admit to. Okay. The owners of this of the CAWs, like Elite and Naira, generate revenue based on the handle. They get a percentage of that handle that Elite generates. So they're getting a percentage of that revenue that they generate. That's almost like never mind. Almost it's it's a conflict of interest at best. It's maybe worse than that at worst. But you know, they're incentivized to give those people better deals, because the more that those people bet and make and win, the better that they do. And that's just not fair to the everyday player. They're really hurting the bread and butter players and the $2 players, and even the non $2 players, even just the you know the semi-serious bettors and the professional players who don't quite come up to that level. But they get incentivized to win over the $2 better because they bet more and they get big rebates. And the more they bet, the bigger their rebates are. Okay. Ed DeRosa did an excellent job providing a lot of commentary of what was being said and what was being discussed at the symposium. Which let me say this: the symposium to me is nonsense. My tweet about the symposium was, to go, I would have wanted 300,000 plus expenses. And after I tweeted that out and thought about it, I said, you know what? I undersold myself. I'd want more. It's the same people, okay, with the same ideas. Nothing happens. Nothing gets done. It's a lot of talk. Everybody's got an opinion. You know what they say about opinions. Everybody's got one. Most of them stink. And I can tell you this: I don't care how good a chef you are, and a lot of these guys are not good chefs, but you put too many chefs in the kitchen, the soup is coming out salty. There's no way around it. Okay. That's just how it is. So you get all these people with opinions in there to all talk about all these different issues, and they accomplish absolutely nothing. First off, you got most of them don't even know what they're doing. You got Pat there. Pat, heart in the right place, I think could do a lot of good if he had the authority to do it. He has no authority whatsoever. Only thing he has is a mouth and a voice and a platform to talk. And people listen to him, but they're not going to do what he says because it's not in their best interest to do what he says. And I don't think that enough people in decision-making positions in horse racing have the horses, the sport, and horse racing coming first. They all say they do. I get that, but I think they have the business coming first, and that's a problem. So maybe racetrack could incentivize executive bonus structures to increase mass market handle. I bet you'd see it go up. Pat Cummings said that, potentially referencing rumors that execs are bonus based on raw handle, incentivizing them to welcome high volume players like CAWs. I don't believe that's a rumor at all. I believe that's a fact. Okay. Here's the problem with that. Okay. Yeah, Pat, I agree. Okay. I think you're right. It'd be nice if executives' bonus structures were made to increase market handle as opposed to just raw handle, incentivizing them to increase the CAWs. Here's the problem. You take all those executives that you just lumped into a group, Pat, I don't think there's one of them that has the ability to do what you're asking them to do. I don't think they know how to increase the handle. Okay. I don't think they have the authority to increase the handle. And I don't think we have the functionality or the ability to work together to increase the handle. I think that's not something that can be done by one racetrack. They look at Indiana Downs. Oh, look, Indiana Downs. What a great job they did. Indiana Grand, whatever it's called. I don't bet there, so I don't know. They increased their handle. Rah, rah, rah. Why? Because they let the CAWs in. And go for the brainer. Okay, great. Yeah, they did a great job. Fantastic. Now,
well, to their credit, they did put in a lot of more everyday sort of regular player friendly things, right? I mean,
and when did they do that? Last couple of years, right?
Yeah, mostly within this last year. One of the big things they did too was they said move their racing days so they're not trying to compete with the larger circuits on the weekends that are running more days during the week. But yes,
Smart
the
thing,
big,
like it,
yeah,
but how much
the
that
big bulk of it, sure, is coming from the CAWs.
I agree. But getting back to this comment by Pat, I agree with him. I think he's right, but I don't think that. I mean, you're talking about a group of executives, okay? Just break it down. To me, simplicity is the essence of intelligence, okay? You're talking about a group of executives that you want to see increase mass market handle, and they can't figure out how to work together to stagger the post time of stake races on a Saturday afternoon. Okay? So if you can't do that, how are you going to do this? Okay? You're asking them to, they can't do something that's kindergarten level, and you're asking them to do something that's Ivy League level. Not happening.
Yeah, I don't know. There was some talk about the post time thing. Yeah, it's a little annoying. I don't get as super twisted as some other people do about it, but I feel like that is kind of like the low hanging fruit, and I'd be shocked if they couldn't figure out how to do it. To me, it just this whole thing just kind of suggests that they just simply don't want to even try to do it.
They talk a lot about it. It bothers horse players. They talk about how, the late odds changes is bothering horse players. Oh, it's terrible. We got to fix it. They don't fix that. They can't because of the CAWs and because of the tote system. But this is something that they could fix with. If you, me, Smoggy Froggy, Torby Dakota, and Walter Alexander were four guys running racetracks, and we could fix that in a 5-minute phone call Saturday morning. You know what I mean? Hey, what time is your stake? What time is your stake? Okay, we'll run ours here. You run yours there. You run yours there. If we got a problem at the gate, hold yours 5 minutes. Done. Great. Better for everybody. Everybody can watch. Got it.
Walter's in.
Right. Takes literally 5 minutes if you got four reasonable people. Racetrack. It's kind of like the need for HISA. Your ship sailed with this symposium already. You've been having these symposiums. What is this? The 100th one? You're not fixed a damn thing. All right? You're not fixed nothing. I mean, terrible analogy. I'm not going to use it. I was going to use an analogy that I guess I really shouldn't use about a telethon that's been collecting money for forever, and as far as I could see, hasn't accomplished anything. But maybe they have. So it's a bad analogy. But these guys have not accomplished a darn thing in all these symposiums. They talk about the same things every year, and we're going to fix this, and we're going to work on this, and we're going to do that, we're going to do this, They do absolutely nothing. Zero.
Well,
Epic fail.
I think a lot of it kind of goes back to your original point. Like, without these CAW teams, the industry would be completely underwater at this point.
That's true. That's a problem.
I think there's just so many issues that I think just coming after the CAWs or the executives that are catering to them is a little, not necessarily misguided, but maybe a little bit short-sighted, because it goes beyond that. And right now, the casual player, one of the million or so sort of, for lack of a better term, normal players that are visiting Saratoga every summer, they are the customer in the sense that they're paying the admission, they're paying the parking, they're paying the concessions, they're buying the beer and the drinks, but they're not necessarily racing's customer every day throughout the year, whereas the CAW player is. So I don't necessarily have a huge issue with these executives catering to their everyday high volume better like the CAW. The problem comes that just, in my mind, that just makes good business sense.
100%.
You're catering to your biggest and best customer.
Right. That's always going to happen.
Right. The problem is that we've been talking about these things for years. The same people are talking about these things and nobody's doing anything. So I don't know that it's necessarily that they don't know how to do it. That just screams to me that they just don't want to do it.
Well, here's where you stopped short of saying something that I think is important. Okay. Yes, it's good business sense to take care of your best players and your best customers. Okay. But you can't do that at the expense of your other customers, your core bread and butter customers. And that's what they're doing with the lack of transparency, with the rebates, with the concealing the amounts that they're wagering, with them allowing them to wager into the pools. Okay. You getting what, 2-3% rebate from your ADW if you're lucky, and they're getting 14%. All right. There's got to be more parity there. There's got to be. Okay. I'm not saying they shouldn't get more, but they're getting a lot more. Okay. They're getting a lot of advantages. Why are they able to bet into the tote system with 1 second left and you can't? Why are they allowed to see what their wager will change the odds to and you can't? Why? You know what I mean? So just, things like that. Yeah, you're going to have to cater to them. Okay. You're going to have to give them some perks, but I don't think you can give them all the perks at my expense and your expense. Some of them got to be at the racetrack's expense and at the executive's expense. Don't make me fund their perks.
Yeah. I just did some quick math. I just went through my ADW account the other day.
Right.
And yeah, I think my rebate is like 1%.
Right. Okay.
It's like,
again,
here's a $25 bet.
So there's
40's generous, Froggy. I think we've got like 5 or 10 left at this rate.
Yeah, no. Now let's see this. National Thoroughbred Alliance Executive Director Pat Cummings. Okay, National Thoroughbred Alliance. They're an organization created by Michael Rapoli, has no authority whatsoever. Okay, but the NTA urges tracks to push players to bets they have a better chance of winning. We do a terrible job pushing players to bets they don't win. He gives an example of a 15% takeout non-jackpot pick 5 at an unnamed tier 2 track that doesn't race year round, where the retail player lost 45%. There's something to be said for that, but I think we need to do a better job educating players that this is indeed a skill game and that they should make bets and go after the kind of pools that they are successful in and that are, quote, better friendly, takeout wise, CAW wise, and whatever wise it is works to you. I mean, if you watch the racetrack feeds, and I don't care which one you watch, okay, it's all the same thing. Start of another pick 3, start of another pick 4, start of another pick 5. You know what I mean? They just push players into those wagers, and those wagers actually hurt churn. You know what I mean? If you were pushing players to make win bets and exacta bets and superfecta bets, they're more likely to bet each race, which is what theoretically, to increase full market handle, like we saw on that tweet before, is what you want. You want more churn. There are a lot of bettors that bet the pick 5 and then they sit back if they're alive, and they don't bet as long as they're alive. They make their next bet when they get knocked out.
That's how I play.
Right. That doesn't help the churn. That doesn't help the racetrack. But racetracks push you and encourage you to bet into those type of wagers, which is against their own interest really in my opinion. So there's just so much that we do wrong as an industry.
Let's see what else we got here.
There's more. I'm sure of it.
There's plenty. There's plenty. Oh, this was a good one.
Every flip flown in America is owned by a horseman. HISA CEO Lisa Lazarus on the challenge of using technology to reach stakeholders in horse racing. That's a very condescending statement, in my opinion.
I mean, you get what she's trying to say. I feel like in this, reading it on Twitter, like, yeah, I feel like if I was in the room, you'd kind of understand, like,
okay, I'll
what
buy
her point is.
What is her point?
Well, I would assume that, you know, because horse racing is behind the times technologically, especially in her area, with, you know, horse safety. She's probably just saying that it's been a very steep challenge because there's not a lot of technology on the racetrack that can, you know, detect when horses might be moving in a bad way, or the drug testing isn't up to where it needs to be to you know, catch potential overdoses or banned substances or whatever. That's what I would assume. Of course, I wasn't in the room, and just reading it on the screen, it does come off a bit condescending, but that would be my assumption based on what her role is at HISA and what HISA's role is at the racetrack.
I'll agree with you to an extent, and give her the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, she could have said it better,
Sure,
or could have come across better. And I think that somebody in her position, knowing that they were going to the symposium to speak publicly about all of these issues, I would like to think she would have been better prepped as to getting that point across than saying every flip phone in America is owned by a horseman. I could see that alienating and insulting horsemen who are already feeling victimized and challenged by HISA and their regulations and their hiccups coming out of the box. So I think, you know, we should have been a little bit more sensitive to that. Walter asked, when have bureaucrats with no skin in the game been good for any game? Never. That I could think of anyway. If you can think of a time, let me know, because I can't think of. Smoggy says fantasy football promoted, successfully marketed all over the media. 100% accurate. You know, we don't even promote horse racing as a skill game. We almost promote it now as a game that you really have no chance to win. It's not fair. It's corrupt. It's dirty. But we're trying to clean it up and play anyway. You know,
yeah,
that's really our promotion, is it not?
yeah.
I mean, am I wrong? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, look at
the
commercials that you see. All right, it's come to the party,
right. Come to the party,
and
or stallions, The
right.
commercials are to breed.
And there's a market for that, but, you know, again, going back to my earlier point about the CAWs being the customer for these big events like a Saratoga, Del Mar, a Breeders' Cup, the Kentucky Derby. The customer is the one that's going to buy for those specific events. It's the one that's going to buy the ticket. It's the one that's going to buy the merchandise. It's the one that's going to buy the food, the drinks, and maybe bet a little bit to have a little fun.
All right, but here's the thing where when you got to really deep dive into customer, okay? Who the customer is, okay? The CAWs, okay? There's I think 13 CAW players. There might be 14 now, but if I'm wrong by one or two, okay? Because there was a time where I knew the exact number, and that wasn't that long ago. So you take that number and you say, okay, they're the customers. So now you're telling me that we got 13 customers in horse racing in the United States, okay? If we take out all the other players, okay, all the other bettors that are betting on their ADWs and betting on their phones and going to the racetrack, and how long do you think these CAW customers that we've decided to cater to at the other customers' expenses last playing against each other? A week until they're back in the stock market or wherever it is they came from? That's how I see it.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think you're wrong.
Okay, speaking symposium. All right, Craig Favell says foal crop is more important than handle. Okay. We talk a lot about competing for wagering dollars, but what we're really in competition for is horses. That's the wake-up call. We need owners. If the foal crop can rebound and we can get back to some positive momentum, we can get back to even. TOC President Bill Nadar said, less racing may not be the worst thing if we can improve the product and make it better. A healthy California is essential. There's some hidden truth to what they're saying here. We do need horses and we do need owners, yet we're driving both of them away, okay? We do nothing to bring owners into the game, okay? And if you think that micro shares and syndicates and these partnerships that are out there all over the place are bringing owners into the game on a worthwhile, meaningful level, guess again. The only people that are making any money and doing any good off of those are the people that own and run the syndicates. There are some very, very good syndicates in there that are a wonderful introduction to the game. In my opinion, that's maybe 20% of them. 80% of them are just buying an owner's license, okay? You're not going to make any money. So do we need owners? Yeah. Do we need horses? Yeah. But what comes first to get all of that, okay? We can't take care of the horses that we have now, okay? The aftercare, slaughter, that whole side of horse racing is underfunded, undermanaged, just horrible. If we can't take care of the horses that we have now when they're no longer on the racetrack, how can we hope to get an increased foal crop? You're putting the chicken before the egg, or the egg before the chicken, or the cart before the horse, whatever way you want to put it. If you can't take care of the horses that you have now when they're retired, how could you even look to raise the foal crop and bring more horses into the fold?
Yeah.
What's going to happen to them? Where are they going to go? You can't take care of the ones you got now, and you want to bring more? And that's your answer? We need owners? You got owners that don't understand HISA's rules, okay? HISA doesn't even understand their own rules. You got different rules at different racetracks. You got stewards making ridiculously inconsistent decisions all over the place, and we need owners. Good luck.
Yeah, it solves the issue. More wagering, more handle.
Right? And what does it take to do that? You need a healthy, level playing field, a good product. There's a lot of options to bet your money now. Okay. Yeah. There's a lot of ways to gamble if you want to gamble.
You know what the problem is too is that I would bet that if, let's just say, hypothetical, tracks said, okay, we're lowering our takeout. Let's just say whatever it is. It's right now it's 20%. And they said we're gonna lower it to, I don't know, 16, 17, even 18%. But we're gonna send some of that direct to thoroughbred aftercare. I feel like the horse players themselves would be more on board with that than the executives would be.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. And you can't go by me, but I'd be willing to play this game at the current takeout rates. What's the worst takeout bet that there is off the top of your head? I don't know, the 20, 25%. What's the worst?
Well, the Naira pick six carryover is 24%.
Okay, if you told me that of that 24% takeout, 5% went to thoroughbred aftercare, I'd bet it every time.
Yeah. I think most people would. I think they'd stop complaining about the pricing being so bad because they knew that their money was going somewhere worthwhile.
You want to know where it goes? I'll tell you where it goes. It goes to paychecks.
Yeah.
Right. It goes to executives' paychecks. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? Racing is so fundamentally mismanaged and has such a bad business plan and business model. And when you just do this symposium and put all these people that all have different interests and all have different ideas in the same room every year, and like I said, they accomplish absolutely nothing. Zero. A colossal waste of time. Epic fail, in my opinion. The wagering public is often neglected. CHRB Director Scott Cheney later acknowledged. Now, to me, this is the best one of all, okay? Scott Cheney, okay, is the steward, okay, or was the steward who decided that Bayern should stay up in the Breeders' Cup Classic when he took Shared Belief out of the race coming out of the gate. That, to me, that was an epic neglect of bettors. Okay? And Bob Baffert's my friend. He won the race. You know that. Okay? The horse deserved to come down. I don't think there's anybody. If Bob was sitting right here and we can get him off the record, which I don't think we could, but if we could and should Bayern have come down, I think he would say absolutely. That was one of the worst calls ever. This guy made it, and he said the wagering public is often neglected. Come on, man, go home. Just go home, Scott. No, I mean, I don't even know what to say. Go
home. Two left here.
Worst call ever. One of. One, in my opinion, one of. Modernizing the condition book. Student of the year, Eric DaCosta suggests redoing claiming races by moving to a handicap rating system and making all races optional claiming. He also points out that claiming races has higher fatality rates than allowance and stakes. I don't even understand what this guy's talking about. He missed student of the year. He's obviously much smarter than me because I don't know what he's talking about. He's saying make all races optional claiming race. Then he points out that claiming races have higher fatality rates than allowance and stakes. So then why do we want to make all races optional claiming? Probably there's more to this that I'm missing, Eric, that's lost in translation. I don't mean to be rude, but obviously this is just over my head. I don't know what he's saying. Why? I mean, racing secretaries have had a hard time with the condition book over the past years because they've got a tough job trying to fill races with the horses that they have on the grounds. So they've gotten very creative with optional claiming races and, you know, all these different conditions that they come up with to try and fill races. I don't know how much more creative they could actually get with the stock that they have.
I wonder if he means, you know, the moving to a handicap system where you wouldn't need as many claiming conditions, because perhaps the handicap system would allow you to have those horses kind of spread across, you know, maybe 2 or 3 of the current claiming conditions and make it a more even race. That's how I read it.
Maybe. I just think there's a little bit of a contradiction in how he words it by asking for something and then saying,
yeah, I don't know. Would a horse carrying more weight make it more or less safe? I don't know. I'm not.
And I don't know if he means handicap is in that sense of where we're putting weight on horses. I think he may just mean some kind of grading system. So I'm not really sure of what he's saying. But hey, he's the student of the year at the University of Arizona racetrack program, so he must know something that we don't know.
All right, last one. We'll end with the poll.
I'm with the majority. Andy Asaro. There was a poll at the end. The question: do you have more trust or less trust in the industry that the game will grow after listening to or reading about developments at the symposium? Less. A lot less. And that's bad coming from me because I started with none, and I have less. So if you start with none and you have less, where are you? I'm like on Thoroughgraph. I'm a negative number.
But that's always good.
Yeah,
you should be at like you should be at like a 25 Thoroughgraph.
Right. Less. I don't believe they've got a clue to do, you know, how to do what they want to do, if they even knew what they wanted to do. You know, like I said, you put too many chefs in the kitchen, soup's going to be salty, even if they're all good cooks. And I'm not saying that they are all good cooks. I think you got people up there that you know have different interests, have conflicts of interest, have their own agendas, and don't really know how to fix what they're tasked with fixing. And HISA is starting to look more and more like that type of organization as well. You know, day by day. And I started as a big supporter of HISA, and I try to remain that way. And I'm giving them every benefit of the doubt, but they lose me chipping away, you know, day by day.
Yeah, I mostly agree with you, though. I think at a certain point, and to what I said back to Froggy a few minutes ago, that, you know, 5 to 10 years is what I think this racing as we know it now kind of has left. I think at a certain point, the noise from social media, the noise from the declining handle is just going to get to be too much, and they're going to have to do something. Otherwise, the game isn't going to exist. So
that's a scary thought. That's a scary.
It is, and unfortunately, you know, the positivity that something is going to get done is kind of rooted in the negativity that, you know, you got to hit rock bottom before you can start to build yourself back up again. And I feel like that's the sort of path that we're on right now. You know, I think just following along on social media from different panels. Like you said earlier, John, there's a bunch of people out there that their heart's in the right place and they want to do good things for the bettors. They want to do good things for the industry as a whole. They want to do good things for the horses themselves. But it just seems like there's so many hurdles in the way that just makes it so challenging, and everybody just kind of gets tired after a while.
I agree with that. And I'll close with this question, and I think it's an interesting question for you, Jim, and for anybody else that may want to answer it now or later on in the comments. How many of the people, excuse me, shot callers, let's call them, that were at this symposium speaking are going to read that poll and see the lack of confidence? Okay, 91%. Okay, somebody just put up here that it's up to 500 votes and 92% now. Okay, how many of them are going to read this, and what is their reaction to that going to be? And I think that's key, because to me, if I'm a shot caller and I read this, I'm like, okay, we did something very, very wrong here. Okay, this was an epic fail, the symposium. We failed to reach the people. We failed to get our points across. We failed to instill any confidence that we're capable of doing what we're talking about doing. What did we do wrong? What could we do better? What did we miss? What did we miss? And I don't think that's what you'll see. I think that if any of them do see it, which is questionable, but a lot of people follow Andy, so some of them might, and Andy's good at ramming it down people's throats, so maybe he'll put it in front of them and force them to see it. How do you think that they will react? And I'll ask you that question before I weigh in with my answer, and we can close with that.
You hope they do something, but I'm not terribly confident that they will.
I think they react total negativity. Oh, you can't make everybody happy. Oh, they didn't understand what we were saying. Oh, they don't get it. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And get like, ultra defensive, as opposed to saying how I would respond and say, hey, what did we miss? Where did we go wrong here? And I think that's where it starts. Needs to start. What did we miss? Where did we go wrong? Why did 90-something% of the people have less confidence now after listening to us talk for 2 days, or how many days, whatever it is? Feels like a month, like watching paint dry. But where did we go wrong? And I don't think they're going to say that. I really don't. I think they're going to say, oh, these people don't understand, or oh, Twitter is negative, or whatever. But that's the response I think you'll get, and I think that's part of where the problem lies.
Yeah. You've obviously been following the game longer than I have. I'd say I've probably been following it rather closely for 10, 12, 15 years now, and this is about as rough of a year as I can remember, just from the bettors complaining about the pricing and the product being noticeably worse. The lack of safety for the horses, like we saw throughout the summer at Saratoga. Then this symposium that was just like seemingly a lot of hot air. I don't know. It was one of the longer years in racing from what I can remember.
It was a rough year, believe it or not. There have been rougher ones. This was a pretty bad year, and I think maybe in totality, when you combine everything that we're facing and everything that we're dealing with and going through, this was one of the worst years. And the scary part is it's probably a trend going forward. I don't see anything coming out of this symposium, or anything coming out of HISA, or anything coming out of anywhere else that says, hey, you know what? Things are going to get better. Hang in there. Yeah. I don't see it. If it's out there, and I hope it is. I love the game as much as anybody. But I bet less than ever. I'm very particular about where I bet and what I bet. I'm not one of those guys that they can count on that is just going to throw my money in no matter what. You know what I mean? I look at every wager as an investment, and I'm particular about where I put my money. So they don't have me as a, you know, oh, we got this guy, he's going to bet no matter what. That's not me.
Yeah. All right. Well, we can leave it there. I think we covered a lot of ground in 90 minutes. Thanks everybody for tuning in. It seems like there's a lot of action in the chat that we should do more of these. So we'll have to make the people happy. These are our customers.
Right. These are our customers. And we appreciate you all. Subscribe, hit the like button, you know, share our stuff. We appreciate it. It means a lot. We're trying to grow the channel. We're trying to get out there. We didn't announce that this was going to be a live show in advance because it was a little bit impromptu, but you know, we thank you. This comes from the guy who bet the Jaguars to win the Super Bowl. Let me tell you something, Walt. That was a good bet at 26-1 at the beginning of the year. And I always say no losing bet is a good bet, but that was a good. There was sound logic behind that wager. I still say so. And they were in every position to take control of the number one seed going into that Sunday night game when Trevor Lawrence got hurt. Ouch. Killed my whole advanced Super Bowl bet right then and there. One shot. Dead. DOA. I wonder if I got a cash out option. I think I do. I'm going to see if I got a cash out option. Probably lose money on it.
Yeah, probably not at this point. They've got your money.
I think so. Anyway, thanks everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Jim. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Hope you all enjoyed the show, and ciao for now.
Nobody does it better.